You guys can hear me? I'm like, perfect. I won't have to change the microphone. So let me start. My name is Telannia Norfar. I teach at Northwest Classic High School, and I'm here to talk to you about implementing project-based learning in your classroom. Really my journey about it. And what really happened about 10, almost 11 years ago, is I realized kids really don't do this. They don't run in my class and say, yes, linear equations, Miss Norfar, I'm ready, I'm down. Said no kid ever. So, even then, 11 years ago, when I was introduced to the idea of project-based learning at the school I realized, like Dan Meyer, that the math classroom needs a makeover. That we need to think about math in an authentic way and having kids really do recognize and say, yes, I really do want to learn this. And so what I ended up doing is running into BIE and learning about their 8 essential elements to design project-based learning. And so what I'm about to do is really tell you about the elements, give you some things that I did in my classroom that are project-based learning, and then thank you for your time. So the biggest element is standards, but don't think of standards, think of big ideas. Unfortunately in mathematics, like me, like you probably really learn the procedures and not what is the big idea. So it's not really just about solving equations as much as it's about getting them to understand equality. And then it's also not just about them getting the math, but getting these other skills too. So the concepts go along with the 21st century competencies. I want them to think critically. I want them to communicate. I want them to collaborate and be creative in math. And that leads to authentic work, which is one of the elements that works tightly with the standards. And when you think of an authentic situation for that content to live in, then it creates this challenging problem or situation or question that can guide the work. And so you as a teacher can help guide it by being able to get to the math content, but the kids actually start to cater. I always say you gotta capture a kid's heart before you ask their head to follow. So, so the challenging problem or question is the start for them. And that question continues to be more questions. It continues to be more answers, but then leads to more questions. And that idea of the questions being generated by them produces a voice and choice in them that allows them to have their own color stand out. Now, this is not meaning that I just relinquish my classroom to 9th graders, but what it means is that they have a mind and I use it, and they have a voice and I've been able to have them say it. But the coolest part is the critique and the revision of the element. It's the ability for kids to realize that it's not just about doing it once, it's about doing it well. And so they, myself, experts, all join in and critique and revise, and in that process, we're also getting meta, or as my students say, reflecting on our learning and on our way of learning. But the biggest part of it all is that it becomes public. They don't just do this for me, they do it for a bigger audience. That's hence why it's authentic. And so they actually present to the outside world. So now I'm gonna switch and kind of give you an idea of how these 8 elements have shown up in my various math classrooms. I've taught algebra, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, pick a subject and I've done it. So in algebra 1, one of my biggest projects is called the cell phone project. Here you see some of my kids a few years ago working to help parents know how to pick the best cell phone plan. Now, did they know they were learning linear equations at first? Absolutely not. Do they even know that they learned step equations? They still don't. But they did. And international finance was another one I did. This is actually a student talking with a student in Australia. We switched classrooms. Kids in Australia moved kids to Oklahoma City, and we moved Oklahoma City to Australia. And then that also led to our cafeteria being redesigned. And so we, as a 4-group team, redesigned our school cafeteria and took surveys and experiments to fix that. The Comfy project was redesigning a home for a 4-person family, and that was one of the students' presentation to the family, one that was actually in the consideration of the running. The popcorn project is a redesign of a popcorn container from Cinemark theaters that my kids go to frequently. They didn't know that the project wasn't real, but they, as far as they knew, we were redesigning Cinemark's containers. And then in Algebra 2, my students helped this family plan for college for their son, who was 2 at the time. And in the process learned about exponential and logarithmic equations. So after I do a lot of this, a lot of times people are like, well, you know, how can I find out more? So here's my contact info. If you want to email me or tweet me or Facebook me or whatever, And you also can fill out that link. It's just SL, Student Centered Learning Training.